Hello, my name is Cheryl Erickson and I'm the Indigenous focused ECE instructor with Louis Riel Vocational College. Today in Chapter 8, we are going to be reviewing helping children understand and accept limits. But before we get started, just a reminder to read Chapter 8 as this video is not a replacement of your daily chapter readings. So when we look at helping children to understand and accept limits, one of the approaches recommended is to try using some consequences for children. So consequences are a natural process used when a problem is already happening. You want to change that behavior immediately, and the behavior is caused by a lack of understanding. So a consequence isn't a punishment, but it's a natural process to quickly stop a behavior. So for example, if a child is playing with Legos and starts throwing the Legos, and so that's the behavior that's happening. You want that behavior to stop. You would say to the child, Lego is for building. You need to build the structure. They're not for throwing. And if the child continues to throw, the next possible consequence for them would be to take the Lego away. I would also tell them what it is that you're going to do. If you throw the Lego again, I'm going to put it away. So it gives them the choice to continue the behavior or stop the behavior. So that being a natural consequence. Not a punishment because it's not harming or hurting the child, affecting their self-esteem or self-worth. The idea of consequences is not a new idea, and other theorists have explored it. So all the way back to 1932, when Piaget described consequences as sanctions. They've also been categorized as natural and logical, and the name of consequences to behaviors has again been something, a natural practice, I guess, since 1932. So a way to correct behavior using something that's happening within that moment. So natural consequences for Piaget was something that's happened as a direct result of a child's behavior without interfering with any others. So a few examples of that is, one example of Piaget from your textbook is a natural consequence for a child who broke their window is to be cold. So now you've broke your window, so it's going to be cold in your room, would have been the natural consequence there. If you choose not to put on your mitts, your hands are going to be cold. And if you don't finish your lunch, you're going to be hungry. So those are all parameters with children having choice. And choose to either correct the behavior or you will have a consequence to that behavior. There was other processes as well for Piaget in his theory regarding limit setting for children, and another one was exclusion. So a child is asked to leave the area or space as a result of their behavior. So for example, say a child is throwing the Lego. We'll go back to the Lego, but there's other children playing at the Lego as well. Do we pack up the Lego when a few other children are still enjoying it? Absolutely not. We would tell the child that now you need to move to a different area. You can't play with the Lego anymore. So we are now redirecting that behavior, and it's not a forever, but you chose to keep throwing it, so now you can't play with it anymore. And when you're ready to listen and listen to my words and follow the rules, you can go back to the Lego. So you're kind of leaving it open-ended. It's up to them to either follow the rules that you have regarding those toys and materials, or you need to leave. So that's another, example of a limit setting. Deprivation is when a child is denied access to the material that they misused until they are ready to behave appropriately. Again, that's kind of going along the same lines. You will send them away and then connect with that child. In most situations, they're upset because they have to leave, or they're angry because they have to leave. So just for the adult to approach them to say, are you ready to go back to, say, the Lego table? Are you ready to play with that Lego again? So that, again, is another form, and it gives the child an opportunity to correct the behavior and move back. Restitution is when a child repairs the damage that is done by replacing a broken toy, assisting, maybe they hurt somebody, so they're assisting somebody who's been injured. It is a interesting practice for setting limits. I think that a child has to be of an age where they understand, that what their actions has done as well. And I think it needs to be a little bit meaningful for them. I've worked in school-age programs where children had to pay restitution in the situation where they damaged equipment on purpose, and so they had to provide something of theirs from home. We didn't require that the parents paid for that, because that's really not a learning process for the child that it's up to their parent to pay. We wanted it to be a little bit more meaningful, and that the child had to give up something of their own that was important to them in order to help with that teachable moment as well. So different examples, I think these different scenarios or steps that you can go through are very much going to be age appropriate as well. We also, some behaviors can be reciprocal, and so when that happens, a behavior that maybe a child, say a hurtful behavior or something that happened where a child, say for example, is pushed down, or they push a child down, can come back. So for example, they may not understand or accept or learn from that experience until it happens to them, and then it's, wow, that hurt and I didn't like that, and they realize that, yes, I did that too, and now I know how that feels. So there's been practices for children that bite, for example, and this is not in any way, shape, or form a opportunity to put this into practice, but often moms believe that when their child bit, if they bit them or another child bit them back, or they got bitten back, that would teach them not to bite. And that really isn't the case, because that's usually in infants and toddler ages, and they just don't understand. They can't relate that concept. This is more common when the children can get to an age where they can understand perspective taking and actually realize they did something and they hurt somebody, but they get the other side of it when it happens to them. So it's an interesting practice. For example, in this situation, an adult can withdraw cooperation when a child is not cooperating and state back to them, remember when you would not share with your sister? Now I don't feel like sharing with you. So trying to teach them how what their actions did, how that hurt somebody by putting themselves in the same situation and now doing it to them. So hopefully that made sense. It's an interesting concept. I would prefer something like a teachable moment in that situation where, you end up sharing, but to kind of reiterate, I'm going to share with you, but remember last week when you wouldn't share and how sad your sister felt. How would you feel if I didn't share with you today? So it still gives them an opportunity to really see in practice how their actions affect somebody else. So when we talk about logical, natural consequences for children, it should be, something that is not, they should be natural and logical. Related to what is happening in that moment, but it shouldn't be something that is removing a basic need. So for example, if a child doesn't want to eat snack, or if a child doesn't want to clean up and the next transition is lunch, you can't reasonably say, well, if you don't clean up, you don't get to eat lunch, because lunch is a basic need. Something logical there would be, if you don't clean up now, your lunch is going to get cold. So, it's giving them a choice. Do you want to eat your pizza hot, or do you want to eat your pizza cold, or your soup? Those types of things. But you can't deny them that basic necessity of life. So natural consequences for a preschool child should be something that occurs immediately and isn't prolonged. So for example, the whole Lego situation that I gave, logical would be taking Lego away or removing them from the situation until they're ready. Logical wouldn't be, you can't play with Lego for the rest of the week, because that's just too far. It's too great of a time. It doesn't make sense why you would have to eliminate it for such a long period of time. So it should be something just in the moment, natural, related to their actions, and then giving them the opportunity to correct that type of behavior as well. Related consequences are directly tied to the behavior. It's communicated through actions that certain behaviors will not be tolerated, helps children learn. There should be a reflection, some type of teachable moment. So we should be guiding that child back to it. So if it's something that, they've done to a child, or something's happened with the environment, or somebody else has had an issue in the environment, and now this child is displaying a behavior or experiencing a behavior, relate it back to when this behavior occurred. And it could be a meaningful, teachable moment for that. And you want to always give them opportunities to make the right choice too. Restitution, simple things can be done with restitution, from a child knocking down a block tower and their friends are upset and sad. What can we do? What can we do for your friends to make them feel better? And that could be rebuilding the block tower. If a child hurts another child, getting them to help with the first aid, ice pack, things like that, giving them a hug, but that would be a can I ask first, just not grabbing a child and hugging who might still be upset and angry about that type of situation. And something that's really logical for restitution is just cleaning up your own mess. And hopefully there's a learning process in all that. Deprivation is a related consequence as well. So not being allowed to use the materials that were misused, allowing the child to determine when he or she is ready to re-engage in that play activity is really important too. And that could be a lot, giving them the time to just self-regulate is important in those situations as well. And again, this is a there is a major distinction between consequences and punishment. So all of these are guiding techniques used to teach children, used to problem solve, used to teach children limits, because limits are really important, rules are really important, and if you don't follow them, there are consequences. However, they're not harsh, hurtful punishments as well. Exclusions versus timeout. I have a lot of thoughts on exclusions versus timeouts, and I do believe that timeouts for children are way more effective when they choose to take the time to self-regulate, to kind of reset. That's more meaningful than it is to just ask a child to leave an area and move on without really explaining why it is that you've done that. A lot of times we do that as adults because we're upset and frustrated, and we just send the child away, and we're resetting as well. If a child is asked to leave an area and they become upset or frustrated, just give them the time to deal with those emotions. And then when you see that they're settled and they're in a state that you can better communicate with them, take the opportunity to do that and explain to them what it is that was going on in the area that wasn't okay. So better to do it that way versus removing a child and really not explaining why, and they're confused as to what it is. You want good communication. You don't want children to feel like they're being excluded, removed from the group, not welcome. You could give some mixed messages there. So make it more of a positive experience than not. And there are times as ECEs where we're getting frustrated, and it's okay to say to a child, you know what, I am frustrated, you're not listening to the rules here, and I need you to think about that before you can play, or I want you to go over to the library area and look at books, and when you're ready, come back to me. So timeout can be, an exclusion can be used effectively, but again, your communication style with the children is going to be really key, because you don't want it to affect how they feel about themselves, or that they feel bad about themselves. So that does conclude Chapter 8 in helping children understand and accept limits. Please do see your instructor if you have any questions, or if just to check in to make sure you haven't missed any handouts or assignments pertaining to Chapter 8.